People who live in St. Tammany tell us they are shocked and saddened after hearing former Sheriff Jack Strain is under investigation for allegedly sexually abusing teenagers, some of whom were underage at the time. Investigative reporter Katie Moore and our partners at The Advocate first broke the story, and tonight Katie brings us new details.
Federal investigators may have uncovered the sexual abuse allegations when they began searching for a motive for an alleged kickback scheme involving former St. Tammany Parish Sheriff Jack Strain and a privately run work release program in Slidell.
Federal investigators in this case had mentioned during the investigation that they were also looking into the motive of why this public corruption bribery case took place with the work release program back in Slidell and possibly even in Covington.
Sheriff Randy Smith says he got an indication from federal investigators that they were looking into these allegations some time ago.
And sources say the case involves the alleged abuse of at least 4 people, boys and girls. And according to Smith, investigators are exploring whether high-ranking members of Strain's administration may have had knowledge of the alleged abuse.
Some of these alleged allegations occurred when some of these individuals were much younger, in their teenage years. How far back, I don't know. How many, we don't know.
Sources say 2 of the victims were employed at St. Tammany Workforce Solutions, the inmate work release program at the heart of the public corruption case. Strain privatized the work release in 2013, awarding a no-bid contract to 2 of his top deputies, who were also childhood friends of his. Smith says the St. Tammany District Attorney has met with the FBI about the allegations against Strain, but a spokeswoman for DA Warren Montgomery's office would not comment on whether they're involved in the sex crimes investigation.
This is very disturbing and shocking to not only to me, but I'm sure the community as a whole, this parish. You know, it's one thing when you're dealing with public corruption, but when you have allegations of sexual abuse in the form of underage minors, it's sickening. It's very disturbing.
Covington Police Chief Tim Lenz, at one time Strain's chief deputy, said he had no clue about the sex abuse allegations and that, quote, the allegations need to be investigated fully, and if they're proven, he needs to be held accountable. It's a sentiment shared by many in St. Tammany as a law enforcement investigation into another top law enforcement officer in the parish unfolds. Katie Moore, Eyewitness News.
Strain has not been arrested nor charged with a crime at this point, but 2 of his top deputies, David Hansen Sr. and Clifford Skip Keene, have been. They're charged with soliciting bribes and conspiracy to commit wire fraud in federal court.